You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. Hi, y'all. I'm Joanna Newting, joined today by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Hello, sister. I'm really excited about today's guest. I'm happy to hear some good information and see where we stand right now with all the interesting AI data centers information. Somebody's been researching a lot of stuff, so we're happy to hear about that.
Absolutely. We've got Clayton Tucker in the house. He is a former water researcher for the National Science Foundation, secretary of the Texas Farmers Union, a fair trade organizer, and he also helps manage his family's ranch in Lampasas. Clayton is running to be our next Texas Agriculture Commissioner to make food and farming affordable, protect our water, and put the brakes on AI data centers in our Texas communities. Clayton Tucker, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank y'all for having me.
So excited to have you here. We have run into each other a couple of weekends in a row, one at a Farmers Roundtable event conversation, and then one where the community put together here in Caldwell County a town hall, if you will, to discuss the AI data centers. And you seem to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And we wanted to just have you on to help educate folks on exactly what is going on and what the implications of these data centers are. And then we can also talk about what inspired you to throw your cowboy hat in the ring for Texas Ag Commissioner. So let's dive in first with a little of your backstory. So you come from a farm and ranch family. Tell us a little bit about that, Clayton.
Sure. So we've been in Lampasas for about 4 generations now. The family originally came from more Flatonia area. That farm is still in the family, just a different branch, and that's from like the 1880s. But in Lampasas, we raise mostly cattle. We have a couple of goats. They're the famous ones on social media. They're the fun ones. The cows. Some of our cows are growing. Their fame's growing. We have a mini bull named Teddy. He's a hoot. And I just help manage the ranch, trying to kind of rebuild it. A lot of our fences are 50 years old, and fencing is the bane of my existence. Admittedly, it's kind of hard to do fencing when you're also campaigning all the time, but that's more or less it. We're slowly transitioning the ranch to regenerative and full organic. We got mostly there. We're away from fertilizer, so we don't need fertilizer anymore.
Good for you.
Which is conveniently timed.
Yes, it is. We can talk about that too.
Unfortunately for most folks, fortunate for us right now, but very unfortunate for literally everyone else.
Yeah.
You know what from the permaculture standpoint, the problem is the solution. And the fact that there is this problem, it's the perfect opportunity for people to learn about and begin hearing more about regenerative agriculture and ways that we can use products and materials that we have on our own land already, wood mulch, which so many people have, different things that they can use to support themselves and begin to move down a path where we don't need the fertilizer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we create our own. I mean, it's a compost tea, so I just grab, goat mess, cow mess, a couple other food scraps, make a tea out of it and spray it. And it works.
Yep.
Honestly, it works better than anything I've seen.
Yeah.
Well, when the cost of fertilizers were going up, Sister and I just looked at each other and we're like, great time to learn about regenerative agriculture, people.
Mm-hmm. A lot of folks talk like regen is something new. In my opinion, it's really how we used to do it. After World War II, all the war companies wanted to still make money, so they just convinced farmers that we have to use all these agrochemicals. These agrochemicals are literally war chemicals. And they had a pretty good propaganda machine, I won't lie about that. So they convinced a lot of farmers we have to do this, when in fact, we survived thousands of years regenerative, and it works just fine.
Exactly.
Yes, for sure.
Our health, you can see the rapid decline of health when we started doing all that. and using all these chemicals, not only war chemicals, exactly like you said, war chemicals into the life of our soil, which is the life of our plants, the life of our animals, our own life and health. So I'm super excited for this time that we're coming to. It's like the crisis is being forced, and something that we have to do things differently. So anyway, I'm here to support and soothe anyone that needs it, because wonderful things are happening and people are waking up to what has been for so long. And yeah, things are just getting better and better. And I'm super happy to have these conversations and this talk with you. I mean, of course, there are going to be negative things that we're talking about, but the fact that we're talking about them and bringing awareness to this stuff is the positive thing, so that people can wake up and begin to use their own voice to make better decisions about what goes on in our communities.
100%.
You know, as you say that, sister, this is something like with the data centers conversation, you know, it's bringing people from both sides of the aisle together to unite around saving and protecting our communities. And, you know, for so long, we've wanted people to be more interested in the Farm Bill and what's happening in our agricultural spaces, what's happening with our farmers and ranchers. And, you know, someone that lives in the city, they don't think about these things. They just kind of go to the grocery store, they get their food, they go home, they do their thing. And the data center conversation is also opening people's eyes to what is happening to our farm and ranch families and what's happening to our agricultural lands. So I would like to dive into the data center conversation, but there's a lot of people having the data center conversation, but I want our conversation to rotate around the effects that these data centers are having on our livestock, that are having on these farm and ranch families and the agricultural ecosystem as a whole. So you tell us a great place to dive into that conversation.
Oh boy. So the topics I definitely want us to cover is, of course, water. We're going to need to talk about power, land use. And one of the ones that is not talked about enough, in my opinion, is the noise and the heat these data centers create. If anything destroys agriculture, well, water will be the first thing. You know, if they drain all of our water, not very much we can do after that. But I've been hearing some pretty bad horror stories about the noise and the vibrations these facilities create. So I'm happy to jump in whichever topic y'all want to go into first.
We'll talk about that, with the noise piece, because, you know, we know that the water situation is atrocious. In 2025, I think it was estimated that the existing AI data centers in the state used 9 billion gallons of water, but the number of AI data centers that are on the docket, I don't even know what those numbers are, but it's probably...
Nobody does, because they hide it.
Yeah.
Which if they had nothing to hide, you know, then they wouldn't be hiding that number. So the fact they're being shady knows they're doing something wrong, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So yeah, let's dive into the noise. So a lot of these are very early reports, and a lot more research is needed. I know research is being done in Oregon, research is being done in New Jersey, and research is being done in a number of other places. Even if what I'm about to say is not 100% true, I do believe there's a lot of truth to it. But even if it's not 100%, it's enough reasonable doubt where we need a straight up moratorium until we can verify if these reports are true. So these data centers create a massive amount of noise and a massive amount of heat. It's just like, even like the chips heat up, and even if they have an open loop system or closed loop system, whatever kind of system they have, they generate massive amounts of noise. It's basically it's kind of like a Bitcoin mine, very similar, where it's the cooling that does it. That noise travels up to 5 miles, and that heat dome also travels up to 5 miles. That noise, and there's two types. There's the type we hear, it's like a constant vacuum, but there's also the noise that we can't hear, but our animals can. So I was talking to this farmer, he didn't grow up farming. He grew up in Dallas, and he just always wanted to be a farmer his entire life. He retired. He found his perfect little farm just north of Dallas, kind of Gray County, and he moved out there. And he was just really enjoying his retirement. He said he just really, really, really enjoyed the agricultural lifestyle. Then, in this case, it wasn't a data center. It was a battery facility, which are not as bad as data centers. They're just like a step below when it comes to noise and such. And they built that battery facility right next to his farm. And for 2 straight years, not a single new calf. Every calf was complete stillbirth. His cows used to sleep in a little ravine. Then they started sleeping on the far side, literally next to the road. They would rather sleep next to a road, like pushing against the actual barbed wire fence, than to sleep in a ravine close to the facility. And eventually he had to sell out. Like he couldn't do it anymore. He lost $100,000 because those things really harm property values as well. So he's moving to a different county.
Wow.
To try to restart. I've talked to folks, and there are early reports that within that 5-mile radius, livestock such as cattle, goats, and sheep, they'll stop reproducing, or they reproduce a lot less or a lot more stillbirths, and they lose about 30% of their body weight. And again, that's not just the noise that we can hear, it's also the noise that they can hear, and that those vibrations. Animals are way more sensitive to those things than people are. It still affects us, and we can go into that as well. The chickens, we're seeing early reports that chickens lay 50% less eggs. I saw some people say their chickens started dying a lot more often. I've only seen that report in one place, so not 100% sure if that's true. It could be a different factor, but again, reasonable doubt, we should research this before we potentially sacrifice a lot of our farmland and our agriculture. Horses will get really stressed. I've heard the stress hits horses really, really hard. Same with donkeys and other equine animals. And then, of course, you have the heat. So they create a heat bubble that travels about 5 miles. That could be anywhere from 4 degrees higher to 20 degrees higher. Texas is already hot. And, we're having a super El Nino probably this year, which means a very hot summer. So, a 100-degree day will be 120 degrees around that time. That would affect not just the animals, but also imagine how that would affect corn. Imagine how that would affect sorghum or cotton or any of our other plants, or just grass or trees. They're just not meant for that.
Yeah.
That would dry out the soil. That would just do a whole bunch of other things. And of course, if it's affecting plants and animals, imagine what it's doing to humans.
Well, that's what I was talking to Sister about yesterday, is the way an animal is processed and the stress that animals in slaughter facilities are under. And then we as humans, if we're eating that meat, then you're eating stressed out meat, And so okay, if that's their life as they go through a slaughterhouse, imagine just their entire existence being stressful. What is that going to do to the quality of the protein?
Because as a rancher myself, my goal is for my animals to have only one bad day. All the rest of their days of their lives should be fantastic, stress-free. They should just be loving it, and they only have one bad day, and that bad day is short for them. So yeah, it really does harm our entire food system, and it's just kind of cruel to our animals, to be honest.
It's very inhumane.
It is
truly
inhumane.
And I have thought, because I feel like moderation in everything, and that I understand there can be some need at some point, but I'm like, I need you to build so that all the walls are blocked, so that there's no noise. I mean, if you want this kind of facility, I don't want to even know it's there. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that. You want to take money from the counties, and I was very upset about this yesterday. How can you come in and want a discount from the counties, these poor counties of, individuals that don't make a lot of money, and you're asking them for a discount while you're harming their animals, their land, moving them out of the way to build your roads or whatever. I mean, there's so many things that are inhumane about it, not only to, people and the animals, but even, the soil. Really, the temperatures of the soil can kill the life in the soil. And so then here we are. That's the same as putting fertilizer on it. So bless us.
Yeah, and there's a couple data facilities that have tried to add noise barriers. With current technology, it's physically impossible. Like, there's no such thing. The amount of noise they create is just literally impossible. Now, there is new technology coming. It might be here in about 5 years that would completely resolve, well, knock on wood, likely resolve a lot of that. So, in the computer chips, the thing that heats up is the copper, right? Like, that is the mineral or material that gets really, really hot. If you can replace that, computer chips don't get that hot. And they figured out how to replace it with fiber optics, generates literally no heat. And because it generates and uses very little electricity, like maybe 1 to 5% of the normal electricity a computer chip uses. So because it generates no heat, you don't need cooling. So you might not even really need that much water. We'll talk about water in a little bit. We can have water-free data centers, which is something I will be doing my absolute damnness to mandate. And then we don't need, facilities 5 miles long. You could condense it down into a single building and just stuff it in a warehouse that's been abandoned in a city.
Yeah, some of those Walmart
solutions are there.
Centers.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I believe, I don't even believe, I know we are living 100 years behind in technology. The technology that is available in this world that could be used right now would render, like just exactly what you said, obsolete. And we say, 5 years from now, somebody's making a ton of money off this right now, just building all this crap so that they can then make more money later, tearing it down and building some other stuff. So it's so boring because I really feel like technologically speaking, there's so much more that we don't know that's not available to us that would render this completely obsolete.
100%. The data centers as they're designed now only have lifespans of 3 years. Literally the whole damn thing would have to be torn down and rebuilt in 3 years.
Well, and this is so in Stonewall County, they want to give the data center 10 years of a tax break, and then they'll start paying into the county. You say that's 3 years. What's happening for the rest of the 7 years?
Well, and so as you say that, there is so much water that is used just during the construction process. There's so much water used during the construction process, not to mention then the cooling of the system and them saying a closed loop cooling system uses less water, but it uses more electricity. And then the electricity needs water. So it's just like, none of it really feels like we're being told the truth. Everything is just like these half truths that get layered into some sort of a story of, we're bringing a lot of jobs to your community. But it's like you're raping and pillaging communities of their water and bringing in people. These aren't local people that are getting hired to do these construction jobs. People come in, they stay at the motels, or they set up campers or whatever, I can just visualize, okay, you're going to have 5,000 people that you're giving a job to, but how many of those people are actually going to be from the community? And then when you're done constructing it and they leave, how many people are going to be there? And then you're saying in 3 years, it'll be obsolete. Like, it just feels like a crime all the way around.
It should be. I mean, they're pillaging our Texas. And I even think about Abilene is learning a very hard lesson right now. A buddy of mine, he's running for office as well, from kind of the Lubbock, Abilene area, and he went to an event in Abilene, and he decided he was just going to stay there during the night. And Abilene's where they're building the big Stargate, and he just wanted a cheap, basic motel, like a Motel 6. Something that in most cities would be like $70. The cheapest hotel you could find was $600 a night. An apartment in Abilene is more expensive than an apartment in Manhattan right now. So when they say they bring jobs, kind of as you said, like, it's a scam. Like, they're bringing jobs. Most of those folks aren't from there. They're not going to stay there. And you have so much local inflation, it literally drives out the locals, the people who were born. Like, there are people born and raised in Abilene that have to leave now. And once they leave, some of them may come back, but some of them definitely won't. So
That's where part of our family's from. So, back in the day, we would drive 70 miles to Abilene to buy groceries because we're out in the middle of nowhere. But our parents, they had doctor's appointments or something. Something was going on. They were going to spend the night in Abilene. And they had the same experience, a place that they normally stay. And it was a nicer place. And they maybe normally spend $150 or something. And yeah, it was like double that for them to stay at a place. And so everyone's noticing real quick that things aren't exactly as they seem.
I've been hearing of 5-hour traffic jams in Abilene, which
I haven't heard that, but
I mean, I haven't experienced it. I just heard it, which one of my friends said something that just kind of cracked me up the other day is, we're building these things so fast and they seem to have no problem with building them. Meanwhile, I-35 has been under construction for like 30 years and will be still under construction in 30 years. So, like, what's the deal here?
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's one of those things where the government gives you a budget, and if you don't exhaust it, you're not going to get it again. This used to happen to me as a marketing director. Like, I was given a marketing budget, and if I didn't exhaust it the next year, I could count on getting less money. So you figure out a way to spend money, even if it's not necessarily needed.
Necessary.
Yeah.
Which leads to the cycle of corruption.
Yeah.
In a way, like, it's not like picking pocket corruption per se, but it's like the low level.
Yes. So let's also define what artificial intelligence is.
So there's two terms I like to use. Data center. And when I say data center, that's like the chat GPT. That's the AI. That's the thing that's probably going to automate our jobs away. Then there's what I call the data banks. And that's where, when you watch a movie on Netflix, a movie lives in a data bank. When you upload something to the cloud, you post something on Facebook, you upload a photo, that lives in a data bank. The difference between data banks and data centers is huge, actually. Data centers, the AI ones, use 20 times the amount of water and power and resources than a data bank. I have no issue with data banks. Like, you can create them the size of a house. You can stuff them in little areas. It's not a big deal. You can have an actual truly closed loop system, not the fake ones that a lot of these AI ones are using. They don't use that much power. They're fine. No real issues with them. There might be a couple of them that get a little shady and we'll have to look into them, but it's the AI data centers, those really massive, 5 miles long, or what they're trying to do in Utah, which is like one of the biggest campuses in the world. Those are the ones that are truly, truly problematic.
And so it's not only the chat GPT stuff, but it's also Ring doorbells with facial recognition, the highway cameras, the speeding cameras, those have license plate recognition. So anything that's got this high video element to it is considered under the AI umbrella.
For the most part, there's different levels of AI. The best description I heard is AI is like the word transportation. A bicycle is a transportation, a car is technically transportation, and a rocket ship is transportation. So, the ones I talk about, data banks, don't require much power or anything like that. Those are like the bicycle. They're easy. What you were mentioning, the license plate reader, the facial recognition, some of the more Palantir kind of weird things going on, that's a little bit more car level. Maybe a little bit of semi-truck as well in there. The ones that are super, super duper big, like Stargate and Abilene, the Amarillo one, those are the rocket ships. And those are, frankly, to automate workers away. So it all kind of depends. But once you get to that car to semi-level, that's when you start running into issues more often.
Well, and the one in Utah that's on the 40,000 acre plot that Kevin O'Leary and Tucker Carlson just had a debate over a couple of days ago. Is that going to be a government data center?
It's really impossible to know. So every time you do a freedom of information request, there's a provision in the law where they say, oh, this is a trade secret. So no one really knows how much water, power, or even their true use are. So usually if we figure out how much power they or water they consume, you just look at how many backup generators. So they'll just use a satellite or a drone to count the backup generators. That's what they did in Memphis, Tennessee. That's the one that Elon Musk built. That's XAI. And they built it right in the middle of a neighborhood, literally right across the street from folks. And they counted 20 those are methane generators. And they're not like your normal generator, like you'll see at your house. These things are about the size of a semi truck. And they spew all this pollution. They're creating a new cancer alley in this neighborhood. The NAACP and a number of other groups actually just sued them for, creating a new cancer alley. But that's kind of how they figured out how much water and power that particular one used. And unfortunately, it's a very, very, very common story. No one really knows what they're being used for because they're not saying. And no one knows how much power and water they use because, again, they're not really saying.
Well, and you've been talking about the generators and, the pollution of it. That's just another element that affects the entire ecosystem of the plants, animals, and the people.
Mm-hmm. And a fun little side note about the generators. So we are about to hit some very, very nasty power inflation. Some states is already hit pretty hard. Some states, I want to say Arkansas, Tennessee area, could be wrong in the exact location. But there are folks whose power bills doubled within a year. In Texas, our power bills are going up as well. And this is both directly and also indirectly being caused by AI. So these folks are building all these new power centers, which they have to have. And, and we need to as well. Like the more we try to reindustrialize, the more factories, like if we wanted to reshore all of our factories, remake everything in America, I think that's fantastic. We would have to double our power generation. There's no way around it. We are completely out of the power generation cores. So, the thing right in the middle that spins really fast, that takes 9 to 18 months you actually grow it. You don't manufacture it. You grow it out of crystals, which I didn't know.
Interesting.
And we're basically out of those. So we're about to not be able to build any new power generation for a couple of years. And we all know what kind of inflation that's going to wreak on basically all of us.
Well, at the Caldwell County Town Hall, the handout that they gave said that the estimated increase to wholesale electricity costs would raise 267%.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where I'll just jump in and say free energy is also a thing. It's absolutely a thing. And this whole energy crisis is manufactured because there are ways. This has already been figured out. People have already done it. And here we sit and it's literally, again, just about money. And when that changes, then all this will change. So, but also I never like to focus on what's going to happen in the future based on what is today, because every day in every way, we are moving towards something better. And Joanna and I individually and together are focused on solutions and moving towards better for everyone. So I know that it's going to work out, but it is so annoying.
But part of it working out is people understanding the ramifications of what's happening. And so that's why we have to have these conversations. And
exactly. But I just want to throw in, because it is so, my heart is pounding. It stresses me. It frustrates me. You know what I'm saying? And I know that it's going to work out. So this is why I have to just interject right here and say to humanity, this is going to work out. We're going to figure it out. We have to become aware of what's happening so that we can make different choices. But ultimately, God wins. So anyway.
Oh, yeah. And I would argue that this, I love that quote from Mark Twain, history may not repeat, but it certainly rhymes. This is not the first time we've been in this situation. This isn't the first time big tech has really caused a lot of havoc. The first time was the first Gilded Age, the 1880s-ish. They were just steamrolling rural communities. Actually, rural communities back in that time were in an economic death spiral. Turns out monopolies is actually a major cause to depression in rural communities. And, the only thing that can beat organized money is organized people. And people got organized. They created the populist movement, founded literally 5 miles from my family ranch here in Lampasas. And that organized people beat the organized money. And it's not like we got rid of factories. We didn't get rid of railroads. We just made them responsible. We made them equal, like actual partners in our community. Not where we were sheep to slaughter, but where we could mutually benefit. And I do believe history will repeat itself. I'm hoping that we can get the people organized soon enough so that we can figure out how to make this all work where everyone benefits.
Well, and that's shifting the perspective from, well, this is inevitable, because that's what we hear a lot. I mean, it's inevitable. This is going to happen. So just and instead of having that idea that it's inevitable of, hey, there are plenty of us that are raising our hands and waving red flags that we can organize. And it doesn't have to
we're
be.
Also
the one
asking better questions. How can we make this work? How can we do what needs to be done without doing too much? How can we protect our community? How can we protect the soil and the earth and the animals and the plants? You know, how can it be done? Because that's the whole thing. They're just going to have to spend more money. We need to create a giant Faraday cage. They know how to do that. Put it around there, you know, like different things that can be done. It can be done. It just costs money. So they have to be put in a position to where if you want to do this, you are going to have to pay the money to do the thing. But again, moderation in all things. So it's just like we live in a world of extremes. Everybody wants to be super extreme. It's terrible. It's the best. It's like, well, you know, like there's terrible and best in all ways. So let's just find that happy medium where it benefits humanity and society and the earth and doesn't deplete things.
And I think this is where we, as farmers in the agriculture community, can truly lead. Because I would argue farmers know the importance of balance more than anyone else. You know, too much water, your crops and animals die. Too little water, your crops and animals die. You know, too much of this, like too much nitrates in your soil doesn't work. Too little nitrates in your soil doesn't work. And that everything has silver linings. You know, rain brings the grasses, rains also bring the parasites. And that's why I'm hoping the agriculture community, and I am actually seeing a lot in the agriculture community. The Texas Farmers Union has called for a moratorium and gave here some conditions that we would like to have met. You know, don't put it on our ag land, don't cause this sort of inflation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've seen other agricultural groups really stepping up and leading on this issue. So hopefully we can keep that trend going.
And one of the things that I'd mentioned to you at the Farmers Roundtable is having requirements of these folks coming in with their proposals for the data centers of, if you want this in our community, your building must have rainwater capture, you must have green roofs. And, you know, when you're talking about a 5 square mile building, you would be collecting massive amounts of water and not having to tap in to the community's water table. You know, there's a lot of farmers and communities that have talked about their water being corrupted after the data centers get access to it. Do you have any stories around that you can share, and any, you know, advice for local administrators to have these more responsible conversations at the beginning?
So I've definitely heard some horror stories. Folks' wells running dry or dropping by several feet a year. And even areas that are already suffering with water. You know, they're trying to build some data centers out in Corpus Christi, and Corpus Christi might be out of water by September if the rains don't come. And there's also cases of the wells getting polluted with forever chemicals like PFAS or PFOAs, heavy metals, and a number of other chemicals. You know, a lot of these data centers will say they filter the water. Well, they can try, but our filtering technology is really not that great, particularly for the forever chemicals. Like we literally can't filter most of them. You know, we can filter maybe 1 or 2 of them, but there's like 500 of them. Now, there is a very simple solution. Incredibly, incredibly simple. And this is something I would honestly want to see mandated for every single data center, both the small data banks and the massive AI data centers as well, is do not use any water. be completely water free. A lot of the data centers on universities, I talked to a guy, he works at a university down in Houston. He manages some of their data banks, and they have water free data banks. They use a plant based oil. And I've been doing more research, and it looks like hemp oil would actually be a fantastic oil for it. You just basically submerge the entire data, the entire server in this hemp based oil, and no more water. Like, you don't need open loop or closed loop or any of that stuff. You just put it there. We'll have to have some pretty strict guidelines. So when you switch out the oil, you just don't go to a near creek and dump it. I'm always a little paranoid of a corporation doing that. So we'll have to have some, pretty good regulations and guardrails against kind of abuse. But hemp oil, particularly if it's locally grown hemp, let's try to prioritize that. I think we could make it a win for farmers, and also they won't drain our aquifers.
Well, that makes perfect sense, sister, with the product that you are involved with, the hemp-based product that puts out fires and is glue that will glue everything and that you can't break, but it won't glue human skin together. Hemp is a fascinating plant, and I am just like, this is just one more thing.
So, tell us your take on the hemp industry in Texas, where you see it now and where you'd like to see it go.
Mm-hmm. So let's break this up into two avenues, because I have two tracks in mind. Let's talk about the farming aspect, the agriculture aspect, and then what we'll call the consumption aspect. So let's start with farming. The shortest answer is we need to cut as much red tape as we humanly can, get rid of as much bureaucracy as we humanly can. It's a plant, treat it like a plant. If a farmer wants to grow it, let them grow it. I ideally would even like to see a lot of the fees first off, I want them dramatically reduced. I wouldn't even mind if they're just completely gone. Just let the farmers grow it, because there's a lot of uses for it. And I'm not just talking like consumption uses or material uses. There's some folks up in Johnson County in particular I'm thinking about, where their land was contaminated with PFAS, these forever chemicals. Hemp is the only plant I'm currently aware of that will pull all of those toxins out of the soil. It'll pull it into the plant. It'll pull the heavy metals. It'll pull the glyphosate. It'll pull the forever chemicals, whatever, into the plant itself, and it will rejuvenate the soil. Like, that is how we clean these contaminated fields. Now, once the hemp does that, you can't consume it because, it would be pretty toxic. So we would have to have a program. This is something I would like to see the Texas Department of Ag create, where if your farm is contaminated with these chemicals, you will, grow hemp for probably 2 to 4 harvests, depending on levels of contamination. The TDA will buy it, safely dispose of it so it's not used, throw it in a salt mine that can't leak anywhere. And then once the soil is cleaned, then that farmer can go sell their hemp to market or do whatever they want. Free country. So on the agriculture side, cut as much red tape as possible. The one condition is no monopolies. I don't want a single corporation or Wall Street or Silicon Valley or whoever to have a monopoly on hemp, really any part of hemp, not in the production, not in the farming, not in the processing, not in the selling. Like, keep it small scale. On the consuming side, so long as there are strong labels, so what exactly is in the hemp, consumable, and where it come from, like a country of origin or state of origin labeling. It doesn't have to be like, here's the farm's address, but this product is from Texas. Something simple like that. So long as that labeling is good, then let adults do what they want. None of my business.
Well, and I would like to add on top of that, natural cannabinoids, no synthetics, because
Amen.
you can take hemp flower and take the CBD and synthesize it in a lab to create the Delta 8 and the Delta 9 and all kinds of other psychedelic compounds. And, I think that is where we could draw the line and keep it natural, but also allow people to consume responsibly, because we don't know what the long-term effects are of these synthetic cannabinoids.
And that's the problem with so much of stuff is we don't understand the long-term effects. We're not waiting we're not worrying about the long-term effects of these data centers right now because that just needs to be done. And so I think this is so much part of the issue with all of the things that we're talking about right now is that they're doing things without understanding the long-term
ramifications
effects of what they're doing.
Yes, when you mentioned early on, part of my intro, like a fair trade organizer, this is actually a fantastic example of what that means. So we were working with a group called the Close the De Minimis Loophole Coalition. It was a really interesting coalition. You had kind of left-leaning organizations like labor unions, and you had right-leaning organizations like police associations. And the de minimis loophole, for folks who don't know, it's sometimes called the Amazon loophole, where basically if you had a package under $800, you could just send it to the United States, no inspection, no taxes, no custom, no fees, nothing. Like it was just a complete glaring loophole. And that loophole allowed a lot of the fentanyl to come into our country. Most fentanyl doesn't come, across the border. It flew over or came through container ship through the Amazon loophole. And we organized, we really try to get folks to understand this. We built that coalition and we were pressuring Congress and the administration, and the Trump administration closed the loophole. Like they, honest to God, have closed it. It looks like the Supreme Court's allowing it to be closed. So we done that. And fentanyl is synthetic heroin. I mean, that's really what it is. They just took heroin, turned it into synthetic, and look what it's done. I'm very skeptical of all synthetics. So I would be definitely okay, and I would actually probably advocate for really reining in a lot of synthetic chemicals and consumables. And natural stuff, let people do what they want.
And when you're talking about farmers farming hemp, there are two kinds of hemp for them to farm: the industrial hemp, or what we are calling the consumable, the medical flower that you can make drinks and oils and the flower in general. So the industrial hemp, that route for a farmer is not complicated. It is filling out some forms, having a survey that you do, because we grew hemp when we leased 30 acres from our family. That was the very first thing we did. And a lot of it was for the remediating factors of what hemp can do on this land that had just been commercially farmed for so long. The point of entry into industrial hemp is not complicated, but I do believe that our government, the state, should be rewarding farmers for choosing to add hemp into their rotation, because it does have redeeming qualities, and it also has a lot that it can do for manufacturing in our state and our country. And we have enough manufacturing facilities now in Texas that we can support the farmers in that. So I would like to see there be more support, more cheerleading for farmers to get involved in the industrial hemp space.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you're saying about monopolies, because that has been the problem. That's part of why hemp has been pushed to the side as it has, because whether that's the medical marijuana or the alcohol industry, they don't want it because it is so beneficial, or the wood industry, the paper industry. Like there are so many benefits to hemp. So anyway, I am appreciating that you recognize the value of the individual and the small producer, so that we can keep things on a local and regional level instead of having all this consolidated, centralized power or groups.
Yeah, Monopolies, fighting them was actually the reason I ended up running for this race. Initially, I did not jump in this race thinking I'd be running my mouth about data centers. That kind of happened. It happened organically, just the more I learned about it. Yeah, monopolies is a major concern.
And did you have another thought on the hemp thing before we switch gears?
First diesel motor was created to run off of hemp. So, if we can recreate hemp diesel, that could help lower prices. Even if it's just, like the red diesel, the farm diesel, just anything to help lower prices, I think would be a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, and if you're talking about all of these generators, let's
there you go.
Switch to a cleaner version of diesel.
That's right. Hemp oil to replace the water, and then running them on hemp diesel. That's perfect.
Yeah, I like to say
See, we're making solutions already. Fantastic.
There you go. And it regenerates the soil. In fact, I would say there's no saving Texas soil without hemp.
I like that.
Right.
I like that a lot.
Yep.
So, what are your thoughts on the water situation? So, we know that the data centers are exhausting the water. You know, if you become Texas Ag Commissioner, what are some of the first things that you're doing to help with the water crisis in Texas?
Mm-hmm. The water is definitely a major issue. Like even a couple years ago in Lampasas, we got hit with one of the really big droughts, like 3 years, I don't know what the time anymore. But it was so big, we didn't have any hay. None of our neighbors had hay. We had to drive 5 hours down to the RGB to find hay. And the hay we found, really, really expensive and full of rocks as well. But, it's the only thing we could get that was at a reasonable price. And us and a lot of our neighbors had to sell half of our herds because of that drought. Texas is known for droughts. Droughts have always been a part of Texas. They will always be a part of Texas. And we are already seeing areas run out of water before another drought of record hits, like the one that happened in 1950, where Dallas was 2 weeks away from running out of water. You look at Corpus Christi, they might be out of water by September. So they're already planned on what they call controlled depression, where they'll be shutting off entire parts of the city, entire areas from water. Wheeler County, or the town, is having major water issues. Their issues are more related to pipes, a lot of lead pipes, so their water isn't safe. But we're just seeing aquifers drop. We're seeing a lot of other issues. And as agriculture commissioner, we have this power that hasn't really been used in quite a while. It's called ag impact studies, where if a new development comes in, especially a data center, or it can really be for any development, we can issue an ag impact study to see how does it affect our water. And then we can also force them to be basically very transparent. It operates very similar to an environmental study, where it'll kind of pause the construction, let us do our actual research, have some numbers that are independently verifiable, not just what the corporation tells us, which to me is always wild when we just blindly believe the numbers a corporation tells us. To me, that's like a peace officer pulling over someone they expect for drinking and driving and then handing them the breathalyzer and says, "You got this." I'll just believe whatever number you give me, I'll totally believe it. That person should probably be fired. But that's kind of what we're doing, to be honest, with all this water usage. But so the ag commissioner can pause things, force them to be honest, and then we can use the power of the bully pulpit, which we've successfully used. I'm not even elected yet, to build the organization, like the community resistance to stop the data centers. I'm just using data centers for this example.
Yeah, one of the other huge culprits is the developers of medium density housing developments that are coming in right next to farms and ranches, and all of the impervious cover that changes the flow of water, that is actually bringing contaminated water onto farmlands. And I feel like we need to pump the brakes on developing rural America. I'm like, everybody stop. It's rural for a reason.
Well, and we have so many new developments that are not even, like, there are houses throughout Lockhart that are for sale. And I don't understand why the need to keep building.
Well, some of those developments are rent-only developments. You can't even buy in these developments, which is its own interesting issue.
I'd be curious to track who actually owns a lot of that, because I know we've all heard of Wall Street, BlackRock, for instance, and all these other private equity folks buying out houses, buying out developments, trying to turn us to a nation of renters. And, they're really kind of succeeding at that. So I would like to see that. And that's also, what you just mentioned, we've been talking about forever chemicals getting the soil. One of the ways they do that is through development. All asphalt has forever chemicals. So when water hits the asphalt from the rain, it pulls the forever chemicals out of the asphalt, goes into sewer dumps it out wherever, usually a farmland. And that's actually one of the ways farmlands get contaminated. I've heard Montana's done something interesting where they are trying to move their development codes where instead of cities growing out, they start growing up, which I don't know all the details of it, but I'm kind of intrigued about how they're trying to do that.
What can farmers do to combat this stuff? Because I know several farmers in my area right now who are struggling with this. What is the best path for being heard and having a voice in what's happening with these developments?
So this is going to not be easy. So there is a lot of money flowing. There's a lot of dark money flowing into not just Texas, but everywhere. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars buying out politicians on both sides, like to be clear. There are some politicians on both sides that aren't getting bought, which is fantastic. We need more politicians on both sides not getting bought. But the only thing that can beat organized money is organized people. So building these community resistance groups. So there's like I'm thinking of a group out in Menard County where they are forming this group to stop the 765 power lines that are just, scarring their land. So like they're not quite a development in that same sense you're mentioning, but a related one where they're forming that group, they're throwing lawsuits, they're kind of building those numbers because there are strength in numbers and we far outnumber them. And I like to say it's not left versus right or city versus country. In my opinion, is really the 300 million versus the top 300. So as long as we stand united and we stay together, we can win. But that it will require us to kind of organize locally, which my campaign has been helping out. We're helping people in Temple and Fort Worth and San Angelo as well, and a couple other places to fight against irresponsible developers who are taking too much.
Well, and what we're seeing in these smaller communities too is that the whole community shows up rattling cages, mad as hell. And the 3 county commissioners are bought somehow, and they can look at a room full of people where 98% of the people are saying, we don't want this, and then they approve it.
Mm-hmm. So there's there's one good development and 2 hopefully more on the way. So I was up in Hood County, Granbury the other day, and they have a new county judge elected. I guess county judge elected at this point. He's not fully in office yet. And he ran against data centers. He ran against big tech, these tech barons, and he won. So he beat the guy who was otherwise bought. So we're seeing that, and hopefully we can use him and Hood County because while the city of Granbury is not being great, the county commission isn't up. And we're also seeing other county commissions, Hill County, Johnson County, Lampasas County as well, and a number of other counties have been, if not calling for a straight up moratorium on certain things such as data centers, then calling for more power from the state. Then there's 2 other encouraging developments. There are recall petitions for city council. Some city councils, you can do this. You can't do it for all of them. But there are some where they're trying to recall their mayor or other city council folks for taking money and bribes. That's going on in Temple and San Angelo. And if that happens, what's fun about that, you only have to be successful 1 or 2 times before you scare the dickens or the rest of it's across the state. So hopefully we'll have some good news there in the coming months.
Well, and that also, you saying all this tells me people that worry so much about federal elections and then they sleepwalk in their own community. It's like we have to know exactly who we're being on our city councils and electing as our judge and whatever. Don't let that be an afterthought when you get to the polling booth because you've spent all your time being mad about who's going to be president, where it's like who's really affecting your life are these local folks.
What always annoys me, you have like 12 people all packed running for Congress, and then there's like literally no competition for school board or city council.
Yeah.
Or, any of the county commissioner, county clerk. Like, y'all, we got to build that grassroots base, run against these folks, challenge folks, let there be actual competition, not a monopoly market because a lot of them have monopolies in power. And as you said, to be frank about it, your city council is going to do more to help your life than Congress ever will. It's not that Congress is powerless. Congress can do fantastic things if it chooses to. But more your day to day, that's your city council, that's your county commission.
Yes. So, what did inspire you to throw your hat in the ring for Texas Ag Commissioner, since we are talking about stepping up?
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of a story, and it starts when I was a water agriculture researcher with the National Science Foundation. So I studied international trade in school. And part of that, I had to, if you study international trade, you kind of need to study how other countries work. Like, how does their trade work? How does their agriculture work? How does their water work? So I lived about 3 years abroad, just studying other countries. How does their trade system work? How does their water system work? How does their agriculture system work? And a couple things happened when I was over there. One is I saw countries that had a really, frankly, fantastic ag system and water system. Now, I saw countries where a 10-acre farm was a middle-class way of life. If you had a 10-acre farm, you were solid middle class. If you had a 1-acre farm, you weren't rich, but you weren't broke either. So now here, average farm is, I talk to farmers with, 3,000 acres, and they're in more debt than they can care to count. And I've also been to countries that do it significantly worse. I was in one country, actually, this was mainland China, and we were going to the lowest plateau, which is like one of their most fertile areas. And we went to this farm, and in the middle of this farmer's field was a pile of dirt, a mound of dirt, 6 feet tall with a power pole on it. And we asked him, why did you build a mound of dirt just to put a power pole on it? Like, that does seem a little weird to us. And he said, oh, that's just erosion.
Wow.
They've lost 6 feet of dirt.
Wow.
I don't think they have that much more to lose. And we talked about their well water and everything else. And, they went from having to dig 20 feet to dig 200 feet, and the water's still toxic. And during that time, I was mostly based in Taiwan, and Taiwan does this thing of, surprise, surprise, you can't really have processed food. You can have, junk food. You can have, burger and things, but it's not full of chemicals. It's not full of antibiotics. It's not full of preservatives like we know it. If you take American bread here and you take it to Europe, you legally cannot call it bread. They actually might arrest you if you try that, because the chemical in yoga mats to make them soft is in our bread. A lot of the food chemicals that we use in the United States are completely illegal. Most countries, if you want to add a chemical to food, you have to prove that it is safe beyond a shadow of a doubt. Here, we do it opposite. You throw it in there, and then you have to prove it's bad once you already threw it in there. And there's a lot of loopholes they use to fill our food full of chemicals. So I eventually got the call from the family of, you're the oldest of the oldest. What you're doing is fun, but, come back to the ranch. So I come back and I see our ag system and our water system in an entirely new light. We're not the worst. We're not, losing 6 feet of soil, but we're headed that way. I would say we're heading more that way than we're heading towards a 10-acre farm with solid middle class. We used to be there. Average dairy used to, if you had 30 cows, you were doing great. Hard work, but you could do what you had, a comfortable life. Now 30 cows, unless you get a really niche market, it's really hard to do. You need thousands to be in a dairy. But something else happened as well. And it is, I found myself allergic to a lot of processed foods. If I eat something processed, it gets a 50-50 chance I'll just be on the toilet for the next several hours. So just those two combination of things of like, well, why is our American food making me sick? Why does it taste like chemicals to me now? Like, I could literally taste the chemicals when I first got back. It was the weirdest thing. And I started researching all of that, started getting involved in that. That got me involved in food policy. So like with the Farmers Union, with Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, with the Texas Organic Gardeners and, TOFGA, Texas Organic Gardeners and Farmers Association, something like that. And just really got involved and tried to change policy while also working on the ranch. And then just started learning about our trade system. I've been fighting John Deere and our international trade as well. They're trying to take the right to repair away. permanently through bad trade deals. And a lot of trade deals, big ag has systematically destroyed family farms across the Americas. Like, not just here, it's Mexico, it's Honduras, it's El Salvador. Big ag is actually the number one reason we had the immigration crisis, is because of the people immigrating, their farms got destroyed by big agriculture. Fun random fact. And that just kind of all led to me slowly but surely becoming a walking encyclopedia. And the fun thing about having half your family in farming and the other half in the military is you're not really afraid to run your mouth. And there's really no hope for my mouth. And, I grew up staring down angry steers. So, like, angry people, sorry, but, so long as you don't run me down, like,
Yeah.
You're not 2,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. So yeah, then people have been asking me to run for several years. I just kept on telling them no, because I just wanted to work on the farm. But then when former Ag Commissioner Jim Hightower asked me, it's kind of funny, he called me up, asked me for lunch. I walk in, a big long table is full of people, and I was like, oh God, what's going on? And they're like, oh no, we just want to talk to you about Ag Commissioner. And after all the talking, I was like, well, if I can use Ag Commissioner to start busting these monopolies, which I do believe we can actually start the process. We can't do it 100% on our own. We're going to need a good Attorney General and a good USDA and others. But, we could work a lot to get chemicals out of food. Secretary Kennedy and the MAHA movement has really been leading on that. And we would like to accelerate getting rid of those chemicals. And then, of course, we found out about water and AI data centers can affect it and what the Ag Commissioner can do. So, not a short story, but that's how it all happened.
Well, I appreciate that. And I had the exact same experience as you of recognizing how broken our food system was after moving to Italy and then coming back to Texas and having the same issue. Like, oh my gosh, I was nervous to eat food.
Oh yeah, I've learned, if I go to a political banquet, I will not touch the food. And it weirds people out. They're like, why aren't you touching that? I'm like, well, the last time I was at a political banquet, I ate the food thinking it'd be safe, and joke's on me.
Yeah, I missed my speech because I was in the bathroom.
Yeah, yeah, that has happened to me before. That's why I do a lot of fasting now. I force myself to get used to it, because when I'm out on the road, I will not eat before speaking.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's easier to notice those things because when we start cutting them out of our diet, our body gets used to having a cleaner system. And then it's like, don't bring that trash back in here.
Mm-hmm. Like with Italy, I was watching a video about how they have their own little police force, like a dedicated police force purely about olive oil. Or if you try to lie about the quality of your olive oil, or if your oil is actually olive oil, like they have a police force explicitly for that, which I just think is, first off, I think it's really funny, but also probably not a bad idea.
Well, they have something similar around wine. There's like, different designations for the vineyards. They take their food and beverage very serious, and that's why I love Italians.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that you mentioned when you're talking about the big ag takeover and, what's happened with immigrants into our country and things like that, there's so much of the dark stuff that happens that really is around food and our food supply, and that it trickles out to all these other areas of our lives. And so, it's just a great reminder how important it is, if you eat food, that you need to care about what's happening in agriculture, because it affects every area of our lives.
Yeah, I've been joking, and it's only half a joke, that really the Ag Commissioner should be renamed the Food Commissioner. Because then city folks would suddenly get it. So, because that's honestly all agriculture is food.
Yeah.
Exactly. Food for somebody.
True. If not for us, then for animals.
Exactly.
Or people abroad for what we export.
So is there anything that we haven't asked you, Clayton, that is important for you to share before we wrap?
I guess one other thing, one of the big responsibilities for the Ag Commissioner is just feeding school kids. And I definitely have a take on what we should do. So I ran for office before. Like, people have been trying to recruit me to run for office for a while. And the first time I just ran for Texas State Senate in the Hill Country. And at the end of the campaign, we turned our campaign not to it as like yet another political PAC. We turned it into a community garden. The city Killeen, which is Fort Hood, that is a massive food desert. It was in my district. Killeen's right next to Pine Pass is right next to it. So we just started opening up all these community gardens, because in the entire north half of Killeen, not a single grocery store. A city of 150,000 people, half of them have no grocery store near them. So we opened up all these community gardens, and the weirdest thing started happening, where the Killeen ISD would call us and they say, hey, we have this kid. They're getting in fights. They're barely showing up to school. They're flunking all their classes. Either they go to juvie or we send them to y'all. And of course we say, bring them on. Yeah, absolutely. And the transformation of these kids is just, I have never seen anything like it. Their emotional health, their spiritual health, their physical health, everything improved by them working in the soil, by them working and tending the garden. They learned responsibility. They started showing up to school. They started, their grades went up. They stopped getting into fights. They would actively make up with people they were getting into fights with. So this is a real sense of justice. And it was incredible. Like, I'd never seen anything like it. And there are some school districts, particularly in the more wealthy parts of our state, parts of San Antonio, I know definitely has it, where the schools themselves have a community garden. And I would actually like to expand this throughout Texas. I would like for this to be the default. And the ultimate goal, though it will take a few years to fully implement, is to turn every school, urban, suburban, or rural, into its own community garden, where you have local farmers come in, even y'all, for instance, to teach the kids, like, this is how this works, teach them the science of it. I think that would be particularly great for boys, young boys, particularly when boys are missing a father figure. It seems to hurt them way, way worse than it hurts girls. And I think this could be a way to help them and kind of their emotional and spiritual health as well. And let the kids pick the food, let them prepare the food at the school themselves, or at least use that food to be prepared. But also, if they're food insecure, let them take it home. Like, if they want to take it home, let them take it home to eat. And I think this does a couple things. First off, it gets kids reinterested in agriculture. The average age of a farmer is 60 years old. I'm 35. I am the first nominee from either political party to be born in the 1990s. Please try not to hold that against me. And, we can get young folks back into agriculture, or at least interested in agriculture. We're still going to bust the monopolies to make agriculture, to make, farming affordable again. If we don't bust the monopolies, people can be as interested as they want. They just won't be able to afford it. But we can do that. We can get healthy food, real food. And I think that would be a critical aspect of, like, making America healthy again, is where people start growing their own food, and maybe it'll inspire them to start their own gardens at home when they have the ability, or start their own community gardens. We used to have freedom gardens during World War II. Yeah. And, that would be great to restart. So that's definitely something I would like to see, as well as, and speaking of the young farmers, just get young folks back into ag. But you have to bust monopolies to do that. Not the only thing to do, but, nothing else will be successful until we do that.
Well, I love that you say that, because we actually have a blueprint for that very thing.
We're doing that here in Lockhart.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yes. We started the process back during the summer, having a conversation with the superintendent, and then he was on board and passed us along to the career and technical education director. And we've been interfacing with the ag students, the audiovisual students, and we'll be in the next semester, starting next year, because we just have our first garden bed put down there at the school as of last week. And so next year, we will also be interfacing with the floral design kids, and also the culinary kids, and also the fabrication kids. They built the beds for the ag kids. And so there's 5 different career and technical education divisions that we're getting to work with at the school. And really one of our big things is teaching about regenerative soil, but also teaching about the business of agriculture and the local food economy. Because we want, when kids graduate, to understand what it's like to be a farmer and to understand how food moves through the system and how, nutrient dense food that you grow in a garden versus something you go to the Walmart Supercenter and get, just how vastly different those things are. So, we've taken our first step into this. We call it our Hands in the Dirt program. And so, the idea being, if we can figure out the blueprint to make this work at Lockhart ISD, then be able to hand that off to people in counties all across the state to do the same thing.
And
we might be calling y'all next year to figure out how we make this go statewide.
Well, we are ready, because these kids, besides teaching them the business of agriculture, just understanding, giving them the idea or the notion that they can be business owners, and the way that whole process works, because so many kids, I think, today are not even thinking about what they're going to do when they leave school. The kids that we have talked to do not seem at all, a very small portion of them even act like they know that they're going to be adults. Like everyone is just in their world, paying attention to the person next to them or their device. And so anyway, it's exciting which next year we're going to get started. We started in the fall, and we literally got our first bed built 6 days before finals started at the end of the school year. So we'll have a head start when we start in the fall, and we'll be able to do the business portion of that. And I'm really excited, because I think that it's going to inspire them to think in a different way. Because right now it's just learning what you have to learn to pass the test to get out, and not really understanding like what it means to work at a McDonald's or to run a business, and how much more fulfilling your life can be running a business and supporting yourself and your family. And
we do have a little evidence of this so far, because, when you're working with kids these days, they give you nothing. You have no idea if they're even hearing you. If they think you're stupid, they're just deadpan. And the next day after doing this with the kids, the ag teacher sent us a text message, and she was saying that the kids couldn't stop talking about the experience, and they had learned so much, and they wanted to go out there and look at the plants and see if anything had changed yet. Or so, it's like a lot of times we don't think we're getting through, but we are. So it's like we just have to keep going. We have to keep doing it, and eventually they'll crack.
That's right.
It just supports kids with different learning abilities. Like I grew up with childhood dyslexia. So through most of my education, I just thought I was stupid because I couldn't read. It was like in my 20s before my brain's like, oh, this is how we read.
Yeah.
But that's why ag has been kind of important to me. But even just, changing how we even think about education. So like what y'all are doing, and just not just the ag part, but the building part, the processing part, all that, I think that's absolutely fantastic. Because that would have helped kids like me in particular, who's like, the education system was not.
And you saying that just made me think too. One of our girlfriends, she works with special needs kids that are like young adults. So they've graduated from high school. They're, I think, 18 to 20, 22. And the portable building is right outside where our garden is. And she's teaching them life skills, how to cook, how to take care of your house, all these things. And so we'll be able to incorporate those kids into the garden as well, so they can learn how to grow food. So that all kind of started coming together at the very end as well. So there's so many different people that can benefit from coming together as a group and growing food and flowers. So we're very excited.
Yes.
And good luck to you, Clayton, in your push as we get closer to the election. If folks want to learn more about you, I know they can go to ClaytonTuckerTX.com, and you are at Clayton Tucker TX on all the social media platforms. Any parting words you want to leave us with? Any calls to action?
First, I just want to thank y'all again for your opportunity, and thank everyone listening for sticking it out as we dove down more than a few rabbit holes. What I'll end with, I know things seem dark and things seem scary and complicated, but again, this is nothing new. Like, we've been here before the first Gilded Age, the 1880s, and it was rural Texans that defeated it. It was literally us, our ancestors, who defeated the first Gilded Age. Because at the end of the day, all Texans fundamentally want the same thing. You know, we all want a peaceful living. You know, we want affordable farms, we want affordable food, we want clean water. It doesn't matter if you're left or right, country or city, white, black, or brown, first generation, fifth generation, or 35th generation. You know, all Texans want a peaceful living. But we do have these greedy few folks, these big irresponsible developers, these big tech folks who are using their bots and their algorithms and, frankly, their propaganda to divide us, to get us to scapegoat each other, when in fact we are all really just fighting for the same thing. But it was rural Texans who realized that in the past, those populist Texans. They united Texas of all stripes, and we defeated the first Gilded Age. And that's how we created the American middle class, and then we'll do it again, and we will recreate the American middle class for everyone.
Giddy up. Thank you, Clayton. We appreciate you.
Of course, I appreciate y'all.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.